Let's talk about this vaccine for kids. Let's talk about some of these results. And the other question beyond this is we're really just talking about Pfizer at this point. We're not talking about J&J and Moderna, right?
That's right. It's unclear what the timeline is for the other two vaccines. And so there's an FDA advisory committee on Tuesday where the FDA's advisory committee is going to take up the issue of Pfizer's vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11. Assuming a positive outcome from that advisory committee, FDA could be in a position to issue an emergency use authorization very shortly after. We've seen the FDA act very quickly after their advisory committee meetings. And as soon as Pfizer gets that emergency use authorization, they'll start supplying the supply chain with vaccines. So they'll start shipping to pharmacies and also to doctors' offices. That's really going to be the innovation here, is that the vaccine's being packaged in units small enough that a lot of pediatricians' offices should be able to take the vaccine and distribute it right in the comfort of a doctor's office. And then CDC is going to meet on November 2nd and 3rd. They're ultimately going to make a recommendation on who should receive the vaccine. And so once CDC makes that recommendation, assuming it goes well and there's a positive outcome, people could start getting the vaccine immediately after that.
Hey, Scott, in terms of changing the dynamic around the country, how much do you think it moves the needle? I ask because there's a number of business leaders that have pushed back return to office and all sorts of other things, in large part waiting for kids to be vaccinated because some parents have felt uncomfortable about exposing their children.
I do think it's going to change the dynamic because a lot of parents who are concerned about bringing the infection back into their home are the ones who are going to seek out the vaccine early. We've seen that in ages 12 to 17. There's about 25 million children ages 12 to 17. About 12 million of them have completed the vaccine series. And so assuming that we see something similar in 5 to 11, probably a little less with the younger kids, you're going to get a good portion of the nation's children vaccinated. And those are likely to be the kids of parents who are concerned about going back to work and then bringing the infection into their home. I think the fact that this is being distributed at pediatricians' offices, and that really was an effort by the administration and, frankly, the company as well, to get these in trays that are small enough, I think that's going to make a difference because you don't want to bring a 5 to 11-year-old necessarily to a mass vaccine distribution center or a pharmacy. You want to bring them to the comfort of the pediatrician's office where you can get good counseling about the pros and cons of vaccination at this point.
What do you imagine the debate around hesitancy for 5 to 11 is going to be, given the debate we've had among adults around this country? And so how quickly do you think we're going to see a meaningful uptake?
Yeah, look, the debate is going to be what the debate has been. Novel vaccine and a novel virus, people wanting to wait and see and collect more data. And also questions about how serious of an infection this is in young children. We know this is far less serious in young kids than older adults, but it's still a serious virus in young kids. We've seen 690 deaths in children under the age of 18, 150 in kids ages 5 to 11. Just to put that in perspective, before we had a vaccine for chickenpox, we would lose about 90 kids a year to chickenpox. And so this is still a deadly virus. In the 24 states that report data on hospitalizations for children, there's been about 25,000 hospitalizations in those 24 states. And many pediatric hospitalizations are serious hospitalizations. More kids end up in the ICU who end up hospitalized because the threshold for hospitalization for a child is so much higher. So while kids are thankfully spared relative to adults, there's still kids getting into trouble with this virus.
And what do you make of what I imagine will be a debate around mandates at schools? I know the school my children go to, I think they intend to mandate it across the board, but I can see this being a raging debate across the country.
Yeah, look, I think that the vast majority of school districts and even private schools are not going to mandate this vaccine. They're going to want to wait for full approval. They're going to want to wait for more information, particularly information about the post-pandemic period. What does it look like when prevalence starts to decline? I think ultimately they're going to wait for CDC to make a recommendation about whether or not this becomes part of the immunization schedule for childhood vaccines. And I think that that's years away, quite frankly, especially for 5 to 11. It could be a little bit more near term for teenagers, but for 5 to 11, I think that's a long time away. You're going to want to see what this virus looks like in that post-pandemic phase. And so will there be some schools that implement mandates in the near term? Probably, but I think that they're going to be the exception. The vast majority of schools are going to make this voluntary, allow this to be voluntary. And I think the vast majority of parents hopefully will seek out the counsel of their pediatrician when making a decision about whether or not they use this vaccine.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.